In this video, we're going to learn how a laser works. Things you need to know is that lasers are special from other sources of light because lasers produce monochromatic, that means one color, or in other words, there's one frequency that's emitted. It produces monochromatic, coherent, right, which means that all the hunks of electromagnetic waves are all in phase. So monochromatic, coherent, and directional light. This is really useful in many different applications when we need monochromatic, coherent, and directional light. So how does it actually work though? All right, so what happens is in a laser is usually a tube of gas, kind of like a fluorescent light. That little tube of gas, like if you'd imagine a laser pen, there's a little tiny tube of gas in there. And what they do is they pick a specific kind of gas, and then just like a fluorescent light bulb, they get the gas all excited by using electrical energy on both ends of this tube, and they use that energy to get all the electrons in that gas to jump up to higher energy shells. So they pump energy in there, and then all the electrons jump up. Well, as we've discussed in the past, electrons don't like to stay at higher energy levels. They always seek their lowest energy level possible. So they will naturally fall down. And as we discussed before, they will fall down randomly, and you never know when they're going to fall down. Here's the thing though. We pick a type of gas though, such that inside this tube that we put inside the tube, such that when the electrons jump up, usually it'll go up to a higher energy level, and then they'll fall down pretty quickly. And then there's always this one energy level that it seems to naturally like to stall for a little bit longer. Now it's still random when it will fall down the next time, but they pick a kind of gas where statistically it tends to take longer than normal to fall this next little bit. And what that makes happen is all the atoms then end up getting their electrons populated at this particular energy level. This is called population inversion, where you excite a bunch of different atoms or electrons so that they're all at the same energy level at the same time. Now they're still going to randomly fall down if left to their own devices, but they're kind of sitting there for a little bit longer than normal, waiting for something to happen. Now, spontaneously, something will happen, right? One of these electrons will fall down and it'll emit a hunk of light, which we call a photon. And it'll emit this bit of electromagnetic radiation. Now, as it falls down, it'll have a specific energy level of the difference between this energy shell and this energy shell, and that photon will continue to move down. Now remember, there's a lot of electrons, though, at the same energy level. So what happens is when it comes to another electron at the same energy level, this electron will also fall down whenever it darn well feels like it, and it'll be totally random. But as this guy comes along and passes by, it then stimulates this electron to fall down at the time that it passes by. So what happens is it's kind of like enticing it to come down when this photon wants it to come down. And it does it in such a way that the two will be in sync. Okay? It's like this guy wants to give off his energy, he wants to fall down, and he's going to do it randomly. But someone comes along with the exact same amount of energy and says, hey, look, hey, I've already come down, why don't you come down with me? And it's almost like a type of resonance where that other electron that's still excited will, in a way, resonate and respond to his presence and then fall down with him, and they will be in phase with each other. Not only, therefore, are they coherent, because the phase difference is always the same, but they're in phase, which means it'll make constructive interference, and the amplitude of those two electromagnetic waves together will make a larger wave. Hence, this is why lasers are so bright. And then those two go along, and then they excite another one to come down, and they excite another one. And so instead of this now being spontaneous, they're now exciting those electrons to fall down at the right time. This, if I could draw an analogy, would be like a bunch of football players chugging a bunch of energy drinks, and they all are super excited and ready to cause some havoc. Now, if you just left them all to their own devices, who knows what they'll do. One guy might beat up a nerd, and another guy might go smash his head in a locker, and another guy might go do 50 jumping jacks, while another guy goes and throws a football around, right? They might just do these random things and at random times. You never know when they're going to release their energy. But if you get one football player to walk down the hall, maybe going football, 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 and he's getting all excited, and he's just releasing that energy. He's all excited, right? He's going down football, football, and he's heading out to the field to play football game. As he passes the other football players, they'll say, "Oh, hey, I want to do that too," right? And they'll go along with him, football, 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 and they'll be chanting together, right? And then they come by the next football player, and they're like, football, football, football. And soon you've got a whole crowd of football players who are chanting football, right? And they are in sync with each other. This is a weird analogy, perhaps, but this is a similar type thing of what's happening with these electrons being at higher energy levels and falling down and giving off photons that are all in phase. So these guys keep on going, right? These two new photons together, and they go and they collect other photons. Now, if you'll notice in a laser pin, it's pretty short. So what happens is it has stimulated this emission, and they're going to keep on picking up more and more stimulated emission. Stimulated emissions of electromagnetic radiation. They're going to continue to pick up more and more and build. But usually we want it to build as much as possible. So at each end, we usually have a half-silvered mirror. And when it gets to this half-silvered mirror, these photons bounce off and come back and then just pick up more and more. And it bounces around in this tube till it picks up a lot of energy. Now, I say a half-silvered mirror because the mirror isn't 100% reflective, or maybe it's not even half-silvered. Maybe it's like 90% silvered. So the mirror isn't 100% reflective, it's just mostly reflective. And so it bounces this energy around in there for a while, but it's still leaking some out. And the portion that's leaking out is the portion of the laser that you see. Now we all know that that laser is very bright and very directional. So it's going in one direction. That's because all those things are in sync. It's very bright because, again, they're also all in phase, and it's coherent. All those little tiny photons, those little hunks of electromagnetic waves, are all in phase with each other and will stay in phase because they both have the same energy level, therefore they have the same frequency, and they were released in phase, all of them in phase together. And that beam that comes out of the laser is pretty bright, but inside the laser it's even brighter, right? Because it's bouncing around, picking up more and more, and only a portion of that light is coming out through the half-silvered or whatever percentage silvered mirror you have in that laser. You should know the acronym of laser. Laser is an acronym. It's not an actual term, but it's an acronym, and it stands for Light Amplification by the Stimulated Emission of Radiation. Okay? This, in short, explains how a laser works, right? It is light that is amplified because a photon comes along and stimulates the emission of other radiated electromagnetic waves. So this is exactly, not only should you know what the acronym stands for, but this also, if you can remember, helps you remember how an actual laser works, which can pop up on an IB test where they ask you to explain how a laser works. In addition to knowing how lasers work, you also need to know some of the uses of lasers. So I'm sure if you just stopped and think about it, you could probably come up with several of them, but you should know how they work as well. One of them is you can kill tumors or do surgery with lasers. Because of its high amplitude, it has a lot of energy, and therefore that energy can actually heat things up and cut things or burn things. Also, they use it, again, in surgery for reattaching retinas. What they do is they use that laser to actually burn or to destroy some of the cells on the retina, and then what happens is it stimulates repairing, right? And it's like you get a cut and your body automatically knows to repair it. So if something has happened to detach a retina or something like that, you can kind of like cut it and poke it and disturb the tissue, and then it says, oh, I got to repair. And so then when you put it next to, put the things back together where they should be and then disturb it, it'll just start making those connections again. Another common example is with DVD players, right? So what happens is that disc is spinning around, and on a disc, though we can't tell, are little, it's not, this is not exactly what it is, but I like to think of it as little mirrors, little tiny mirrors, and some are flat and some are at different angles. And so what happens is as a laser shoots up at the compact disc or CD, or sorry, DVD, it will either bounce the laser straight back and it'll read the information, or if the mirror is at an angle, it'll bounce away and it won't read the information. And so it's either reading the reflection or not reading the reflection, which in turn basically becomes like a binary code. It's either on or off, 1 or 0, 1 or 0, 1 or 0. It either reads it or doesn't read it. And it can store all that information on a DVD or CD with that method, and then get that information back. Similar is how a barcode works in a similar way, right? Where the white spot on a barcode, right? It's all those white and black lines. The white spot, the laser will bounce off because white reflects all light. That's why it appears white. And black absorbs all light. So on the black part, the laser doesn't bounce back. On the white part, it does bounce back. And that's how it can read the barcode. Other ones is they use it to correct vision. Similarly, they damage part of the lens and they can kind of shape it differently. Basically, in a way, they scar it and toughen up a certain part of the lens or whatever to correct vision. And then they can even use it for, you can get lasers with such a high amplitude that it heats up metal to the point where you can actually cut steel. So these are a bunch of different uses of lasers.